Now, we talked about Kizaru, we talked about Aokiji, and today we will be adding in the final part to complete the Admiral Agenda. That being, of course, Akainu. Sakazuki is someone who is not only considered one of the biggest heavy hitters left for Luffy to fight, but out of all of the agendas we have went over, he may have one of the best cases for being even top 1 potentially. I've seen through most if not all the arguments you can make for Akainu being the strongest, and as we go over his fights and notable moments throughout the series, we will also be discussing those arguments and seeing if Akainu is actually him. Now before going into Akainu's feats, I'd like to talk about exactly what he represents as an admiral like I did with the Kizaru and Aokiji analysis. While Kizaru's justice was unclear or conflicted, and Aokiji's justice was more laid back or lazy you could say, Akainu is the believer in absolute justice, which pretty much is the ideology of eradicating evil no matter what and removing anything that gets in the way of that. Even if that includes his own comrades, who Akainu showed zero hesitation in disposing if they weren't following up to code. He nearly kills Koby himself after he tried stopping the war even when they had no point in continuing it. But to Akainu there was plenty of cleaning up to do, and Koby is just simply being a distraction. And of course we do see him make the notorious yo daddy joke to Ace, which leads into his inevitable death. This guy's not only terrifying and intimidating, but he's also good at rage baiting? Oh my god, we're cooked, bro. Seriously though, we see that despite his cruel methods, he gets things done with solid execution, and we can't really say that he's fraudulent. It's implied within guides from One Piece, not even from a power scaling perspective, but from a narrative one, that Akainu generally is considered to be the best. Which of course is why he would inevitably become the Fleet Admiral by the time the timeskip rolls around, and would even make the Marines far more powerful than ever. Now Akainu should at least know Advanced Observation and Armament, and if I'm being honest, due to his ideals and him being already ridiculously powerful, I wouldn't be surprised if he had Advanced Conquerors as well. Though, of course, this is not confirmed and pure speculation. Now, the first time we see Akainu is during Marineford, where we would see him aura farming awaiting for Whitebeard's arrival. And of course we have the Marines gassing up the Admirals, as they are the strongest force that the Marines have to offer. As Whitebeard would arrive and throw a powerful Gura Gura no Mi attack, Akainu would negate it with the help of Aokiji and Kizaru, who all, mind you, are all holding back due to not wanting to destroy Marineford. And we'd see this being stated twice when Akainu engages in a one-on-one with Whitebeard. Now, before we even speak on Akainu versus Whitebeard, it should be noted that Whitebeard from the start of the fight was already declining in health, meaning no matter how you see this fight, Whitebeard would be gradually getting weaker and weaker. However, the one that does initially fight Akainu and throw that attack on the Admirals and engages with Aokiji is stated to be the strongest pirate at the time. Though of course before facing off against Whitebeard, he'd shoot off volcanic meteors from the sky, negating the iceberg thrown by Jozu. And then of course inevitably engage with Edward Newgate himself, with him blocking a swing from Whitebeard, while mind you Whitebeard is using both hands, and Akainu is only using one leg while his hands are in his pockets. Akainu and Whitebeard would then clash with their devil fruits, showing to Whitebeard that Akainu is not going to be that easy to take down. Now the next time we see them fight with each other, Akainu would throw an attack at Whitebeard that would get deflected pretty easily, and this attack would end up doing some damage into a nearby town. But this is where it's stated once again by Whitebeard that he told Akainu to defend the town, implying he's taking advantage of the fact that Akainu isn't going all out, and it's a reference to earlier when they scrapped. But after this point, we'd see Whitebeard getting his heart attacks, and of course Akainu would take advantage of this, with Akainu literally caving a hole in Whitebeard's chest while he's looking like Goku in the Android Saga. So it's pretty clear that these two are nowhere near their peak when they are fighting each other. And for reference, we've seen characters like Garp and Sengoku, two characters who should be comparable to Roger, ending up having to team up while suppressed to take down somebody like Shiki, who at best is relative with Roger. Now, I'm not saying Whitebeard is 50% of Akainu because Akainu is fighting Whitebeard while he's holding back. Obviously, these two situations are not the same. But what I am saying is Akainu holding back and not wanting to damage the surrounding towns is definitely a significant factor to take into consideration. He would also go on to rage bait and overpower Ace, of course, the same guy who would go on and clash with Aokiji's ice and go blow for blow with Blackbeard. And while I'm rereading Marineford, it kind of hits me, by this point, Akainu hasn't even gone all out or really taken any serious damage. And in the short amount of screen time he's had, he's already established to be easily above the Yonko commanders, the strongest admiral by far, and he's someone who can even oppose the strongest Yonko of them all. After burning Ace's guts almost instantly, he'd then be met by Marco and Jimbe, who pretty much were about to die had they continued fighting Akainu. And Marco, of course, is the same guy who not only intercepted Kizaru's attacks and also saved Luffy from Aokiji, but even later on in the series, after not fighting since Marineford, would go on to 2v1 King and draw blood on King in his most durable state, block a blast burn from Kaido, and even fight Big Mom herself. And yet all he could really do in Marineford was momentarily hold off Akainu. And this is where we end up seeing Whitebeard get enraged and hit Akainu with an off-guard attack. And of course in the anime this is a lot worse than what it actually is. Akainu barely even damages Whitebeard in the anime, it gets trick-shotted. However, in the manga, which is the version that we are talking about because it's the original material, this moment is essentially completely different. You see, Whitebeard would pull up from behind and crush Akainu's face in with his Gura fruit. Akainu would immediately recover and then hit Whitebeard in the face, not only removing a part of his mustache, but also a part of his face. And right after this, in the manga at least, Akainu would be hit with a direct Gura blow. However, right after this, we see that the island itself was splitting and Akainu somehow traveled through the ground and tried stopping Luffy later on again instead of just drowning. If the ground is splitting and Akainu got knocked out unconscious, you would think he would fall into the water, right? And so this implies to me that Akainu actually never got knocked out by Whitebeard and immediately recovered, or at worst was knocked out for like a few seconds and managed to wake up right before he drowned. And even after being hit with this attack from Whitebeard, this man is still willing to fight Marco and every other Whitebeard commander plus Crocodile just so he could see Luffy not live to see tomorrow. And I'm not gonna lie, he clearly shows that he could definitely pull this off by literally morphing around Marco and Vista's attacks. Now, this alone could imply he has future sight, but I don't even care to argue for this, as regardless, Akainu is so much faster than the likes of Marco, he can morph around his attacks. For reference, we've only ever seen this speed gap with like Katakuri and Luffy. Now, I won't lie, after this, he kind of looks a little weak as Shanks pretty much stops his attack on Koby, which kind of gives Akainu the hint to stop while he's ahead. Now, I know this was mainly due to Sengoku, but Akainu being magma and still showing that he's able to perspire, it just don't look good, bro. Now, I don't think this scene exactly proves Shanks is superior to Akainu, as this attack was meant for someone like Koby, but we do know that Akainu at the very least recognizes Shanks as formidable and a threat. We know as well there are statements of Shanks clashing evenly with Akainu here, along with the fact that they are both able to make Blackbeard, who just attained the Gura run away. And what's interesting about Akainu's interaction in particular is Von Augur, someone who can measure someone's power specifically by reading them, and yet when Von saw Akainu, he told Blackbeard about retreating, implying based on Augur's observation, Akainu should still be above Blackbeard despite him attaining the Gura. This is all before Blackbeard, mind you, would go on to annihilate the rest of Whitebeard's crew and before Aokiji and Akainu's big fight. Now, unfortunately, we don't ever get to see anything related to this fight, and it's only ever mentioned in a flashback. But, I mean, it still has to be mentioned because this is definitely one of the craziest moments to occur during the post-Paramount War era. Now, these two admirals would end up going blow for 10 days straight, which would result in the island being split in magma and ice, which is just more evidence to suggest that the admirals were holding back, because had Akainu not been holding back in Marineford, half of it would have been covered in magma. And of course, we know that Akainu and Aokiji would literally just go blow for blow with each other, like one would land one hit and the other would land the other for 10 days straight, until of course eventually Aokiji ends up falling, leading into Akainu winning the fight. Now, due to these characters going blow for blow and them probably having the longest recorded fight in One Piece history, it is possible for these two to have hockey bloomed during the fight, meaning these two could have gotten exponentially stronger, as that usually happens when two characters are fighting for a long time, like with Luffy and Katakuri. The issue with this is Luffy himself got stronger and not Katakuri in particular, meaning it's more than likely once hockey blooms whenever it's given the opportunity to, and so I don't think it'd be possible for these two to really grow so much to the point to where they would one-shot their old selves. Especially given the fact that Shanks and Kaido, who I don't think got all that much stronger, are still threats to the admirals. Meaning if they didn't get stronger, it wouldn't be by that much, or they all just power crept their old selves. But I'm more inclined to believe the first possibility, that Akainu is just comfortably stronger, as he himself needs to push the Marines into a better tomorrow. But I can't sit here and firmly say he just one-shot his Marineford self. That's just not true. But he definitely should be above Aokiji after the time skip, the same guy who not only primarily contributed in defeating old Garp, But I mean, this guy off of aura alone had Blackbeard shook when he was attempting to recruit him. Now granted, Aokiji may have been losing to Garp, but it's clear Aokiji was mentally nerfed against him, and Akainu is not only stronger than Aokiji already, but he wouldn't be having that hesitation Kuzan would against Garp. Tyler, why are you mentioning Kuzan's feats in an Akainu Agenda video when you already mentioned Kuzan's feats? After Akainu becomes Fleet Admiral, he does not do a goddamn thing. We know that Kizaru wanted to handle Kaido and Big Mom, but Akainu humbly declined as he didn't want to go into a fight he didn't have prior knowledge of. Wano is a country full of mystery, and of course we just heard about two Yonkos joining forces, so of course it'd be stupid for Akainu to go in guns blazing. And I cannot lie to you guys, the more I'm looking at this guy, the more I'm thinking he might have the greatest resume in the series. Or at the very least, the one character who has an agenda who has the least amount of anti-feats. However, the most he's really done past Marineford is flashback Neg Aokiji and melt Kuma, I guess? And the reason for that is because most of the other time the other admirals are handling his light work like Fujitora and Green Bull. Now, these two, like the others, have Haki and of course have access to Devil Fruit powers. While Green Bull himself can manipulate and turn himself into basically a grass type Pokemon, Fujitora is able to manipulate gravity and summon meteors. These guys, for the most part, are the roaming officers of Akainu that handle business for him, with Fujitora overseeing the situation of Dressrosa, was virtually unfazed throughout the entire arc despite threats like Dofi and Sabo being relevant. This guy mainly represents a laid-back sense of justice like Aokiji, while also being conflicted and seeing the contradictions of the government like Kizaru. Meanwhile, Green Bull contrasts off of Fujitora due to him representing a follower of what is now the new justice Akainu had established with the New World. While Fujitora is a lot more laid back and merciful, Green Bull is cold and merciless. I mean, this guy is so damn spineless, he literally waited for Kaido to be defeated to pull up on Wano so he can try and beat up Luffy while he was weakened, only for his big fight being against a weakened Yamato plus the Scabbards. Like, I'm sorry, when characters like Raizo, Kinemon, and a injured base Yamato, not even transformed, base, are giving you trouble, it just makes you look bad. I'm sorry. But we do see that Green Bull, even despite getting caught lacking a bit, was able to handle these guys plus defeat King and Queen prior to this. So I mean, I guess that's impressive. Seriously though, it does show that Akainu did in fact not hire some newbies. Now, Green Bull and Fujitora are the weakest admirals for sure. However, we have not seen anywhere close to what they are fully capable of. Now that we've broken down Akainu's history and his scaling within the series, we can now talk about the two prime arguments for why Akainu is potentially top 1, and I'm not gonna lie, they're both equally as stupid. The first one, of course, is he has the highest tier devil fruit, which, I mean, is really simple to debunk as this statement is just really how you read it. The devil fruit is stated to be of the highest tier of strength within devil fruits, meaning it's not absolutely top 1, right? But rather, it would be in the same tier as some of the strongest devil fruits that we've seen within the series, like the Gum Gum fruit or even the Gura Gura no Mi, which makes sense since Akainu's fruit and Whitebeard's fruit have shown the ability to clash with one another. So it's not ridiculous to even say Akainu is on this tier anyway. And I'm sorry, what are we gonna do with this statement? Are we just gonna be like, no, he has higher tier, so like what, he's just gonna negate the like barrage gun or something? Is Whitebeard gonna throw a goddamn tsunami at him and he's gonna be like, high tier, and he just like one-shots Whitebeard, really? Anywho, the second and dumbest argument I've personally seen is the whole, oh, well, he could find the One Piece within a year. Bro, oh my gosh, you have no idea how bad this argument gets under my skin, bro. Firstly, if we take this statement hyper literally, this implies Akainu would have a much easier time than Luffy, so who's to say he inherently would even go through everything Luffy did? If Akainu himself is starting at like where he was in Marineford with his devil fruit already mastered, how do we know that he doesn't have a different way of actually finding the treasure unlike Luffy? Like, is the whole argument, oh well, Akainu would have to face off against Luffy's rogues gallery eventually? Sure, but if we're putting him in Luffy's position, wouldn't that also mean he would have to fight Kaido multiple times because Luffy had to grow against Kaido? So what's stopping Akainu from doing this just with less time? So what's stopping Akainu from doing this in a shorter time span? What about the fact that Akainu can fly? Did we even consider that he probably doesn't even have to fight anyone based on his fruit property alone? Like, I don't know why this one statement has everyone in a chokehold when it means absolutely nothing for his scaling because it's too ambiguous. If anything, it just speaks more towards his reputation, which I did mention about earlier. Anywho, despite not being exactly top 1 in the verse or having the best case for it, No, oh, high tier. I do think Akainu respectfully carries the Admirals against the Yonko. And if I'm being honest, if it wasn't for Akainu or Aokiji, the Admiral's agenda would just be in the gutter. But let me tell you one thing. If Akainu for some reason next fight holds back because he doesn't want to fart so that the town isn't covered in an overwhelming stench, I do not care. Akainu, rip ass. I am going to lose my mind. Please stop holding back in your fights.